Hello, everyone. I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Webinars. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, CFO Priorities in 2020, Technology, Collaboration, and Innovation. I would like to thank our webinar sponsor today, Depulte, whose strong cryptic thought leadership and to the Treasury and finance professions allows us to make this webinar possible today. Finance leaders are being challenged to become more engaged in driving results across the enterprise. How does a finance leader become a trusted advisor to HR, marketing, and sales leader? As a trusted advisor, a finance leader provides valuable business insights, strategic recommendations, and helps define the future direction of his or her company. Today, you'll learn how finance leaders are partnering with sales, marketing, and human capital management professionals to impact performance across the enterprise. You will discover how to earn trust within and across departmental lines and up and down the org chart at your company. Before we delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about Treasury Webinars, cover a few housekeeping items, and then cover our learning objectives as they offer the pillars of our value proposition for you for investing an hour of your valuable time with us today. At Treasury Webinars, we offer virtual events designed to empower Treasury, accounts payable, and accounts receivable success at companies of all sizes across all industries. We only do what we do best, which is virtual events. Now for the exciting housekeeping items. Those of you interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions, remain online for the duration of the webinar, and take the post-webinar survey, which will launch immediately at the completion of the webinar today. If you have any questions regarding CTP credits or would like a copy of today's presentation, please send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Again, have any questions regarding CTP credit or would like a copy of today's presentation, please send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com. I'd like to hear from you today so I can take your questions at any time in the questions area of our GoToWebinar control panel. Time permitting, I'll get to your questions during a Q&A session at the tail end of the webinar. Fear not, if we do not have time for the Q&A session or do not get to your question, I will follow up with you directly after the webinar is over today. Finally, I appreciate everyone's consideration in taking a short survey at the end of the webinar today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. Now for our learning objectives for today. I'd like you to really understand what's driving the evolving role of the CFO. We've been talking about the evolving role of the CFO for quite some time, and I think we're finally going to start to see that evolution in practice. I think prior to even the last few years, we haven't had the technology which made it possible for the CFOs to realize this evolution, which I believe is impacting performance across the enterprise. And so we'll talk a lot about that today when we talk about how to be a successful finance leader in 2020 and beyond. The key is knowing how to empower success across the enterprise, communicating effectively. At the end of the day, conquering that last mile is impacting performance across the enterprise. We'd like you to be able to identify specific opportunities to collaborate at your companies, to collaborate more effectively as a finance leader, to be able to build and manage a finance dream team. And now I want to point out, when I say finance here, I mean finance. I include treasury in that, so we're all financial professionals, so think about that as finance/treasury. I know we've got some treasury professionals on the line today. I'd like you to be able to develop and own a winning technology strategy. So I think it's been the case for a long time that technology, the CIO has reported up to the CFO, but I don't think we've really taken advantage of that opportunity. And so I think now with technology the way that it is, the way that we really don't need as much IT resources to implement and utilize cloud-based applications, that the CFO can really take that ownership, and there's tremendous value in doing so, and especially so in nailing the blocking and tackling of finance, which I believe is owning the cash conversion cycle, which I often talk about. So how are we going to accomplish our objectives today? Well, first of all, we're going to talk on the evolving role of the CFO, and then we're going to talk about owning corporate performance management, and that's where I see the real crux of this evolution. How do we own corporate performance management as a finance leader? And we'll talk about the art of collaboration, because impacting performance across the enterprise requires collaboration. You need to understand what your departmental leaders and your employees need to be successful. You need to give them the right environment to do so, the right tools to do so, the right skill set to do so, and you also have to give your managers the ability to effectively manage the dynamics of their team, which includes embracing the dynamics and diversity of their team. So along those lines, we'll talk about how you build and manage your finance/treasury. We like to call it a dream team. And I think those skills are changing and that mindset is changing, and I'm glad to see that. We all need to have technical skills. I think what we really need to do better is soft skills and analytical skills. And also, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, manage the diversity of our team. So we need to teach our team players to cross-train each other and also to train us. So I always encourage people to hire people and work with people that have different skill sets than them and are also smarter than them. The most successful people I've met thousands of CFOs in person. When I ask many of them how they've been successful, not one of them says, I did this, I did that. They all point to a mentor. And then we'll talk about how to own your company's technology strategy, or at least have a significant impact there. And then finally, and probably most importantly, recommendations for actions, which I don't see enough on webinars, and I'm making concerted effort to do that more. I always try and give people tangible advice and things they can take away and implement, but that's really a key focus for me here as we wrap up 2019 and go into 2020. So I love this graphic, which I borrowed from Tammy Vora. There is a website down there, QAspire.com. But I think this is really kind of what we face in the environment that we have to embrace in today's world. I love this. It's they call it a FUCA world. So volatile. We have a rate of change. There's a lot of changes going on, not only in technology, the geopolitical environment, the risks that we face, the opportunities that we face. There's a lot more uncertainty as well that goes along with that. In general, we have a lack of predictability, but the good news is that technology is catching up with some of these exposures of lack of predictability. The world is becoming more complex. We have more issues, and in some cases, especially in the geopolitical world, we have what some folks see as chaos. We need to be able to function in an age of business agility. So one of the things we need to do as a finance leader is give our company strategic agility. How do we do that? At the very top level, what we need to do is we need to mitigate the time spent on non-value-add activities, not only by ourselves, not only by our teams, but as our companies across the enterprise. If we companies really do some research and see how much time is spent on non-value-add activities, I think most of us would be shocked. The research I've seen in this area that is focused on CFOs and FP&A leaders shows that folks are only spending at most 25% of their time on value-add activities. So there's a lot of room there. And so here's the mindset, right, and skills to thrive in this world. And it's not just for finance, but it absolutely fits with us. And these are things that we'll be touching on. This slide, I love this slide. I would encourage folks to print this slide out. This is a slide that I actually have printed out, have up in my office. But we need to develop an adaptive mindset, and we need to facilitate that for our team. I like to call this business agility. Let's understand the dynamics of what's going on, embrace those, and be agile to react in real time to those. We have to have a vision, right? What's the vision? What's the vision for how my department or how my company is going to succeed in today's world? So let's understand all the moving parts. Let's get to know all the players that are going to impact the success of us in realizing our vision. We have to embrace an abundance mindset. What would I think that means for me is I always say learning is a way of life. It's not a chore. And so the CFOs that I talk to, that's their mindset. And that's what I look for. Not only when I look for people to work for me, when I look at my business partners, when you see the companies that I partner with, you definitely can see that when I collaborate with them and I speak with them and I go to conferences with them and I do thought leadership with them, they have the mindset of learning as much as I do. We have facilitate human engagement. So helping people to collaborate across the enterprise as well as doing that ourselves is extremely important. This is one of these things in leadership which I see is not given enough attention, which is another thing that I see across successful CFOs. Be self-aware. We need to be able to look in the mirror, understand what our strengths and weaknesses are, work on our weaknesses, build on our strengths. And as we work on our weaknesses, let's surround us with people that can help us with those weaknesses and help us become even stronger. But being self-aware is a mindset also for your team. And so let's teach people how to not be afraid to make mistakes, to be honest in what they do well and what they don't do well. And part of this I see we'll talk about is we need to understand the skill sets of ourselves and our team and compare those to what we need to be successful, and then figure out how we actively fill those skills gaps. We talked about agility, and then we have to teach folks and do it ourselves, network and collaborate. So we often talk about networking, right, externally. Well, how do we network internally? So sometimes there's opportunities for direct collaboration, but how do we network within our own company? And that's something that we'll talk on as well. I've done complete webinars on that. If you want to have a more in-depth conversation, happy to do that. But there is an art form to building your professional brand. Say if you're in finance, within finance, beyond finance, with your suppliers, being a good customer. And then we need to relentlessly focus on the customer. And I would put and our employees, right? If we're managers, and our direct reports and our colleagues. And so in finance, we need to look at not only who our customers are that we generate revenue for, but who are our internal customers. Let's make sure they're happy. And then for a company perspective, the employees are my customers. What does that employee experience look like? How do I help HR define that? How do I measure that that's being that we have the right environment? We need to retain our employees and make sure that they're happy. And along with that, we need to develop our people. As I said, we don't want everyone to be the same. I see companies still doing this, especially companies that are growing. They have an employee, he's got a technical skill set. You want to duplicate him, copy, copy, copy. No, 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 and absolutely no. Now, some people are a little bit hard to replicate, like myself. I put myself in that category, but you need to look at people that love to learn. So I'll take love to learn over someone with a technical mindset who can't communicate and doesn't have much personality all day long. And then also importantly, back down in the right corner here, is constantly clarify and communicate. Communication is key. I write about this often as well. How do you communicate effectively electronically? We rely too much on email, but if we're going to rely on emails, let's learn how to listen to an email, how to communicate, how to not interpret things, how to clarify things, and keep it simple. And so the world's becoming more complex. There's some ambiguity. Well, let's keep it simple. And those of you who listen to me speak on webinars, I'm hoping that's one of the reasons you like to tune in, is I really like to keep things simple. And so the more simple things are, the easier are. There's no miscommunication, but then you need to constantly clarify, right? Things are going on. Okay, these are our objectives. These are how our objectives align with our company objectives. So as we look at optimizing performance, how does optimizing performance at the departmental level align with the company level, and how does that align up to the factors that offer strategic value to our customers? And so we also, part of communicating effectively is aligning perceptions with reality, right? Internally, my employee, you think you're doing well. I think you're doing well. Let's be aligned on that. Things you need to work on, right? People should not be embarrassed or ashamed to come to you and say, I need to work on things. You got me drinking out of the fire hose. Could I get some help with this? And you need to have that collaborative environment. And then once you become that trusted advisor, you'll start to see people reach out to you as, like, say, for example, we'll talk about this later, as marketing understands that you're trying to help understand the customer and your impact on the customer experience, then they're going to come to you and say, hey, we're thinking about doing XYZ. These things aren't working right. Do you guys have any data you can help me get into? You have more of an analytical framework here. In finance, can you help me work on measuring the ROI of my programs? And it's really something that becomes organic, and it's actually pretty exciting. So before we dive into the evolving role of the CFO, I'd like to do a little, if we're going to look at some research, as we always do. So I want to ask you to share with me what the top priority for finance, if you're a treasury leader, let's make that finance/treasury for your company in 2020, just among the 5 that I have, as we're looking to compare those to research results that we're going to take a look at. Is your top priority cash management? Maybe you're moving towards performance management. Is it growth strategy? Is it technology optimization or process optimization? So which one of these is going to help deliver results in treasury or finance, having the most impact in 2020 for your company? I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Those of you that are interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds or so. Then we're going to take a look at a survey that I really like from PwC. It's called CFO's Priorities in 2018, but it really does a good job of looking at 2018 and looking out 3 years. And this is consistent with what I've seen from other surveys. I just like the methodology and the reach and some of the more in-depth analysis it's done. So let's go ahead and close the polling question real quick. I'll give you guys another few seconds. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. So I must have given you the ability to choose more than one option here, which is fine. So not surprisingly, what I've seen consistently across CFO research that I've done CFO research for several years. I used to work directly with the CFO Alliance and help with their research. Also have done my own research as well. Growth strategies always towards the top. I'm happy to see process optimization is there. I'm really good to see technology optimization is there, because that's really what empowers our best practices. Of course, as a treasury person at my soul, I like to see cash management there. But really, what I like to comment on is all of these other categories, they really fuel growth. So performance management, cash management, technology optimization, those focuses allow us to really execute on our growth strategy. So all those that go into that effective growth, whether you're going to grow by M&A or in that organic growth in growing your existing customer base and building that business out. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer the polling question. So just to see what we see from the survey, so I like to look at the 3 years out. So we see at the top performance management, which is what I talked about in the introduction, which we'll focus on quite a bit, and growth strategy. So obviously optimizing performance fuels growth. We see organization and human capital rising up, which I think is incredibly important. I'm glad to see that. Cash management, we're about the same. Risk management is important, but process optimization is here. So I'm a little surprised that we didn't see a response or an area more focused on technology optimization, but it's just interesting to see, right, how this really, the evolution, I think what we've seen, that I've seen in CFO research in terms of the priorities, is we've seen, and also a related area, which is very similar, is what's going to impact success. And what we see as performance management and involved in that is that collaboration. So we need to collaborate more effectively, take more ownership of strategy, right? And so and more ownership of technology. So that's what we see as well. And another reason I like this survey is there's actually a breakdown by company size, which I think is interesting. So sometimes I myself, I've worked in companies of all sizes. I don't think I've ever worked at a large company. I've worked at a middle market NASDAQ company. I've worked in an association. I worked in a nonprofit. I have my own companies. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, can you speak directly to me? So this is what I like to see. And so you can see the different priorities here. But what you see still is performance management, right, is pretty common. And growth strategy, we have a little bit more importance in cash management with your small companies and SMEs, probably because we need to fund our companies. And then we start to see human capital management come up for middle market and large companies, which I love to see. And that's where I see companies that I work with that are on a fast growth track. I think that's where they have the most challenges. I think sometimes companies hire too quickly, and like I said again, they hire like the same group of people, and sometimes they forget what made them successful in the first place, and that goes to the culture, and we'll talk about that later. So just as far as that evolution, again, my point here is I don't like to say the word CFO evolution all that much anymore, but now I think I can talk to it because I think it's actually starting to happen. And the reason that it's allowed to happen is because of technology. So technology is, now are we going to do that? Are we going to take advantage of that technology and own that performance management? Well, that remains to be seen. hopefully I'll give you some great insights on how to make that happen. So let's talk about how to own corporate performance management. As I said earlier, and sometimes people don't make this connection, you have to effectively collaborate if you're going to impact performance across the enterprise. That's just a fact in my mind. And so it's good to see that in the survey, this is another great survey. This is by Grant Thornton. If you want the link to the survey, please send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com, or you can get the whole presentation. But it's good to see that we must provide advanced analytical support to business units. So we see that there's only 3% that disagree or strongly agree. So we realize that the need is there. We need to do it. And then, so this CFO is closely aligned with marketing, sales, and customer experience functions. Now this one, I'm going to have to do a little T for timeout here because I don't believe this for 1 second. So if we believe finance is closely aligned with marketing, sales, and customer experience, yes, that's what we'd like to happen. In my mind, it's hard for me to believe that 92% of companies are there yet. I wish we were there, but I find that hard to believe. I hope we're there, but that's just kind of aspirational. I think sometimes, and I may do the same thing, people answer with what they think is going to make them sound good, right? Not exactly what it is, but I just want to say that it's important that, at least from the survey results, we see that the need is there. Now, is this actually happening? I'm going to ask you a polling question, and let's just see. And please be honest. I'm not going to tell your boss, and I would never share your personal information with others of your colleagues or with your company. So I'm asking you to share with me how you would characterize the relationships between finance, or if you're in treasury, your relationships with sales, marketing, and HR. Would you say it's non-existent, poor, acceptable, good, or ideal? Again, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Those of you interested in receiving CTP credit, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions here today. I want to remind you that I can take your questions at any time in the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel. Also, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn and speak with you at length regarding any topic on this webinar or any other topic related to treasury or finance. Let me go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds, and then we'll take a quick look at the results, and then we'll do a little color commentary, and then we'll dive into how you own CPM and the challenges, and then we'll talk about how to overcome those challenges, and then we'll dive into some other areas which are going to drive your success as a finance leader in 2020 and beyond. So let's go ahead, close the polling question. Thank you so much, everyone, for your consideration. You can push the button. Everybody, come on, a couple more. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and share the results. So let's see. It sticks out here. I am pleasantly surprised to see 32% of you say good. Overall, I'm just happy that we've been honest here. So in the other survey, 90% of the people said it was awesome. Those of you that say it's ideal, I would love for you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd like you to share with me how you've made that happen. And so I always love to talk with folks that have had success in that area. So those of you that believe it's ideal, congratulations to you. I would imagine open and honest communication is a big part of that. So those of you that it is non-existent or poor or acceptable or good, hopefully we're going to give you specific advice to move you towards ideal. Now, some people have this idea of ideal, right, that might not ever be met, but I think we all see that there's room for improvement. So hopefully by the end of the webinar, you'll have some ideas, right, to start the conversations, specific ideas to have, conversations to start, take people out to lunch, engage your own team. And if you don't have someone, you don't have a good relationship with someone in marketing, maybe someone on your team is very outgoing, maybe they can have a relationship with marketing. Another thing that I'll talk about a little bit later, a couple of the CFOs I've talked to had this brilliant idea of having interns from other departments. So let's swap an intern for like 2 or 3 months with sales. It's really more of a less formal program that they do at G, where they really cross-train everyone, but that can be tremendously valuable. So thank you so much, everyone, for answering that polling question and being honest about those, how you characterize those relationships. And so it always helps us to take that honest look in the mirror and say, okay, those relationships might not be ideal. Are there things that I can change? Are there people that do have relationships with across the enterprise that I might be able to talk to. Maybe there are people that I have issues with. Maybe someone else has a better relationship with them. Just softball that conversation. Taking people out to lunch, having meetings with food, those are always easy conversation starters. So let's talk about some of the challenges in owning corporate performance management. If you've never done that, or if you're challenged to do that right now, I think this will be insightful to you. But really, you need to define company success relative to company value. That sounds easy. We'll talk about how that's actually done and how there's some misalignment there. But what that means is the challenge is, if we're going to own CPM, we need to collaborate with HR, sales, operations, IT, and marketing leaders to define departmental success relative to company value. So what we need to do is we need to find out what are the drivers or levers of departmental success, right? And then how do we empower our leaders to incent actions, right, that move the drivers in the right directions, and say if we see this KPI go up, boom, it's going to improve productivity. We're going to be able to trace that all the way back up to increased sales, right? So when some people talk about CPM, they talk about, I only want to have 3 to 5 drivers. And I say, okay, that's fine for your macro level, but we have the data, we have the insights now. We should look at the amount of drivers of success. Maybe there's 3 to 5 at each department, right? And then all those roll up to 3 to 5 at the top, and there needs to be alignment, but let's not constrain ourselves. Now, somebody would say you're getting into the weeds, and I would say, good, we need to get in the weeds. We need to understand what makes our people tick, what makes them productive, what information do you need, what tools do you need, what obstacles do you have the conversation. A lot of times those are perceived, right, as well. And so, these things are tremendously important. Some of these things people say it's common sense. Have these conversations. Ask people what they want. Ask them, what's the most challenging part of your day? What are 2 or 3 things that you could eliminate from your job that would make you happy? People will tell you, and then help them remove one of those things. Imagine the good credit that's going to give you. So when people see that you're interested in what they do, learn to speak the language of your colleagues and then teach them the language of treasury and finance as well. So in order to identify these key factors, right, what we need to do is we need to collaborate them, to get those relationships going. We need to help the folks and make sure we have the right technology as a company to measure and monitor these key factors. And so we need to look at establishing the relationships. We'll give you an example of how to do that a bit later, which I've never seen anyone else do. And then again, taking that level down, we need to establish relationships between the specific employee actions and factors that impact drivers of company values. Again, we need to collaborate here. We need to know, we need to have the conversations. We need to identify what these are. We need to validate. We need to continually validate. And then we'll start to see, and related to FP&A, we'll start to see as we move those factors, it's going to drive us towards our results. And that when we look at the variance between our actuals and what we expect, a lot of times we can trace that back to, there was some we had a dip in one of our key drivers of success in one of our departments, maybe our sales department. Maybe it could be something like John is our best salesman. He was sick for a month, right? And we can get down and see those things. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. And so some of you, though on webinars, you've seen this before, but we start to look at key drivers of company value. And that's why I say this paradigm is changing. And especially for us finance professionals, this will look different. You'll be like, whoa, I've never seen this before. But this is where companies are going, and this is where we're seeing success, because it really, if you think about it, it gets down to common sense. Wouldn't that be nice, right? Our customers are satisfied. Our employees are happy. We have good people that work for us. That means it's going to make our company more valuable. Doesn't that make sense, right? Isn't that easy to explain? Now, getting into building the relationships between the quantitative and qualitative things isn't that easy, but this is easy to get people on the same page. So we look at this research that we saw from CIMA. We look at the top 5 drivers of value, customer satisfaction. Well, here's something we recognize: business processes, which you saw in our survey, customer relationships, quality of people, reputation of brand. So we need to start thinking a little bit differently as finance professionals about, so what are KPIs that I can connect to these things. And then as I go below those, how do I connect my departmental KPIs to those things? And one of the things I just talked about yesterday on a webinar was, yes, we impact the customer experience from finance, especially in accounts receivable. So we need to make those connections. So just at the top level, so we start to see these are the value drivers, right? What are the relationships? And I apologize if there's too many arrows here and if I misrepresent or speak through too quickly about those relationships, but these are things that you would do well to do. Just do some mapping here, right? Data quality, right? That's going to improve the quality of our process. It's also going to improve the performance of our people. Our employee productivity goes up, right? That means our quality of people is going up, our customer relationships are going up. So you start to see, and some of these things you're going to have to create and monitor new metrics for, but that's okay. Let's not be afraid. Customer pipeline and retention, that's something our sales folks need help with, and we're the right people to do that. Talent sourcing and pipeline, there's HR. What do you start to see right here? You start to say, I don't see very many people in finance here. I think that's HR, sales, marketing, employee engagement. That's me. Employee productivity. That's me. That's my team. Data quality. That's IT. That's my team. So you start to see that if I'm going to impact these KPIs and move these KPIs in the right direction, which are going to offer more value to my company, I need to be able to collaborate effectively across the enterprise. And so let's take a dip down. So let's go down into accounts receivable. So let's try and tie accounts receivable to our drivers. And now we're going to see things you probably recognize: average issue resolution time, customer satisfaction, DSO. The lower that is, the better our processes are, the better our customer relationships are. And so you can see that you can drop down here and start to look at these relationships and metrics that we can look at and manage. And then we start to drop down again and start to say, okay, what are actions that I do and sent that impact DSO, right? Issue resolution times, take it down another level. I have webinars where I go into detail about how to go down into AP and AR. Happy to share those with you, but this really gives you the framework, or if nothing else, the mindset that I think is very important. And now you're saying, I can't own all this myself, and well, that might be something that you choose not to do, but we should offer the framework, right? And then maybe we get help with people across the enterprise in their departments. What are your top KPIs? Let's work together with my team, maybe in the office of the CFO, and relate those to the value drivers. And so this constant communication and collaboration, and then we're all in strategic alignment. Wouldn't that be nice? When we survey CFOs, like I said, probably doing that last 5, 7, 8 years, always see strategic misalignment as a problem. So involving people in the top line value drivers are usually at the executive level, but that shouldn't be done without input from the departmental leaders. And then when we're taking the step down to our departmental drivers and places where we add value, that should be a completely collaborative process. And so taking the time right now, as you're really, really deep in your planning for 2020, this is a great time to have these conversations, and it's not too late. Don't say, we're already 2020 is already baked. No, it's not. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't use planning as a strategic anchor. You need to have strategic agility. So let's make those adjustments now that we still can. And so let's talk a little bit about putting structure around another area, which is on the front of collaboration. I've had the fortune of working on some webinars and content with Business Partnering Institute, and Anders Louis Lindberg's a fantastic professional, really smart person. And so if you really want to learn more about business partnering, the formal framework behind it, now you might think, I don't want to invest in this framework. Totally, I encourage you to make that investment. But if you just want to see what's being done out there, what's possible, businesspartneringinstitute.org, fantastic. I always work with organizations that offer thought leadership that I think is tremendously and compelling and is smarter than I am. So this is me collaborating myself. So I collaborate myself. I'm trying to offer value to treasury and finance professions, and everyone knows I don't know everything, and that's why you see me. I'll have hyperlinks, I'll have websites. That's because these things are awesome, and I want to share that thought leadership with you. And so I love some of the content, a lot of the content from Business Partnering Institute. So I encourage you to see what they have to offer as well. And so really what I often say is this is where we get to. I use this for FP&A a lot, but this is what we're challenged to in finance and treasury leadership. We need to optimize business performance, right? How do we do that? We can't make every single decision. Everyone knows I like to do that. You have to influence decisions. We have to facilitate better decision making and influence decisions that impact the results, right? So you see that we play that ancillary role in there. What information do folks need? How do we get them the right insights? How do we help them incent actions that optimize business performance at the departmental level that lead to impacting our company value? So how do we accomplish this, optimize the business performance? We need to drive performance management. We need to create or facilitate valued insights. And in order to influence decisions, we need to build trusted relationships. And we'll talk more about that later. And we need to communicate with impact. I love this term. I think this is where I got it from BPI. I use it all the time. That's an amazing term. Use it all day. Use it in your next conversation. Communicate with impact. What does that mean? Same thing with information. You want to make something happen. So if you take no action from this webinar today that you listened to, then I failed because I'm trying to communicate with impact. I want to incent you to ask a question, take some action, have a conversation, reach out to someone on LinkedIn, even if it's to tell someone, I listened to this webinar today, this guy's more excited than I've ever heard anyone be about finance. Okay, that's an impact. So I made that impact. One of the best things that people tell me is you made me think. You made me think about things in a different way. You motivated me to spend more attention to something and ask a question, and that's really part of what my job's all about. So what does that mean a lot of times? Some companies, it means we have to change the mindset. So you can change this to finance, treasury, whatever, accounting, whichever thing is a cost center, but let's focus on finance/treasury. But here's the mindset that I often had, and this was a while ago. My mindset was minimizing costs. We want to look at efficiencies. How do we eliminate risk? Risk is bad. We're focused on data and reporting. Let's just get those reports out. I'm trying to understand the numbers to some degree, and I have a fixed mindset. I'm working out of my inbox. This is what I'm doing. I'm getting it done. Man, my inbox is empty. I'm a rock star. Now, what's the mindset that we need? More of a profit center. Now, I don't want you to go around saying AP should be a profit center, finance should be a profit center, but we have to have the mindset of a profit center to support our business. So how do I maximize value creation for my department? So especially when I talk about AP and AR, I talk about how do I impact productivity? How do I remove productivity drag of inefficiencies? How do I improve effectiveness, right? Doing the right things, relationships with suppliers, relationships with customers, relationships with my employees, relationships with your employees. What are the right risks to take? Let's understand our risk. Let's not avoid risk. Risks are how we move the needle. Risk, the ability to take the right risk is what drives competitive advantage. We want to communicate with impact. We want to deliver insights and recommendations. Everyone needs to want to understand the business. Now, there's so much technology coming, right? Automation, RPA, AI. Everyone in your company needs to have the mindset of now's the time for me to redefine my value proposition. In order to be valuable to my company, I need to understand the business, and we need to have a growth mindset, which means thinking out of the box. How do I do things better, faster, smarter? How do I collaborate? How do I add more value within and across my department? And so I love this slide as well. Finance is just the right place. So the evolution, we're going in the right way. We have the visibility into the whole company. So I worked in corporate treasury for a long time, and people that talked to me were actually amazed how much I knew about the company because I had to, right? I was managing cash across the world. I was helping us manage global insurance policies. I was on our benefits committee. I was helping manage our 401k, and I'm not trying to toot my horn. That's just the way it is. Treasury departments are really small. We were a quick growing company. I worked on acquisitions. So I had to have my fingers in like pies. I worked with payroll. So I knew these things, and that was great. So in finance, we have access to key decision makers. We have that commercial acumen. We have to have analytical skills. Now, more of us are getting better at non-financial. We have data, and our value and our relationships span across the value chain. So the value chain of everyone that impacts the value of our company, including our external resources as well. And so just to kind of motivate you that if you think about it, who's best positioned to play this role as a trusted advisor? And in some sense, what I always say is the keeper of the data and technology, that it just makes sense for that to be done in finance. And then, of course, everyone likes to complain about why we can't do this. And so these are things that we often hear. And so lack of time, right? So here's what I always say to that is if you look at automation and business partnering and AI, what you'll notice is we're going to give people an awful lot of their days back. So we're gonna have the time, but we need to make the time, because the only way that we're going to optimize performance is to work together and understand. People need to stop working in silos and need to look at that company perspective. And now, if we can communicate with impact, we can establish the incentives and accountability for us to think that way. What about the people? Again, people will have time. You start to see the value to certain people. People can see the value to their careers. And then people say we don't make it concrete. Well, then maybe you should. So sometimes you can have things successful in your company without a program, but it's not an insurmountable task. Again, businesspartneringinstitute.org, they have all the information you need on some amazing case studies in tremendous detail. Anders Louis Lindbergh shared with me, there's a great case study I have with him from his company, Maersk. It's amazing. Your company might not be that huge, but really the learnings, it actually drops down. So sometimes when people talk about, at Microsoft, we do this, and I'm like, well, I don't really care what you do at Microsoft, but this stuff, this business partnering, it scales down. It is very powerful. So in terms of kind of the framework, really quickly to give you a little bit more insight. And so people are like, what does a business partner do, right? Why does it make sense? How do I motivate my people? Real quick, I won't dive into this slide, but it's really about the why, where, what, and how, right? And the why, do we have a business partnering role? Yes. What should that be, right? Where should we focus to create value? Again, we need to identify those opportunities. What are the things that we can do? And then how do we deploy our knowledge to create value? So not only how do we deploy our knowledge to create value, how do I consolidate and empower the knowledge of everybody else and help them leverage that to impact the company value? And so their competency model has technical partnering analysis leadership, which is akin to the title of my webinar as well. And so let's go ahead, and before we get into building and managing your dream team, let's go ahead and launch our next polling question. And again, please be honest here. I'm asking you to share with us again, give me your perspective, whether that's more from finance or treasury. My company actively manages the skill set of each member of the finance treasury team. Strongly disagree, neither disagree or agree, or strongly agree. I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Again, those of you interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all of the polling questions that we have today. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this question up a little bit less time than the other questions. I've still got some content to get through, so I want to make sure that we touch on the content. Of course, everyone is more than welcome to have a copy of the presentation. Again, there's not only some valuable content within, there's tremendously valuable hyperlinks in here for you to do a deeper dive in areas that I am not doing justice here. I like to cover a broad base of technology and work with folks after the webinar to really dive deep, but I do have webinars that are specific to each area more in depth. But CFO success, we need to kind of cover the spectrum here. So let's go ahead and close the polling question. So first thing that sticks out to me is I'm actually thrilled that 33% of you agree. And so when I talk to folks, it seems like people feel it's a tremendous undertaking to understand the skill set of each person on their team and actively manage that. So I think that's incredibly encouraging that people have that support. And so, we've got 67, we got 12% strongly agree. Wow, that's even more impressive. So I'm very happy to see that we've got 45% there. We'd like to get everybody else to strongly agree. And so part of that, why people don't do that, is just the framework. And you have time to do this. This is a perfect time. You're setting your goals, right, for next year, your departmental budget, strategic goals. You're setting your goals for your department. So it's a perfect time to see, okay, these are my departmental goals that I need, we're going to accomplish. Now, what skills does my team need to have these? John's got this, Joe's got that, Joe's got that. Oh, we don't have this. So what's the gaps that we have? How do we fill those gaps? Do we cross-train? Do we invest in outside training? Do I need to hire somebody else? And so this is the perfect time to do that. I will say without hesitation, if you invest in the skill sets of your team, people will stay. They will be less focused. I know I'm not a millennial, but I have faith in these folks. They will stay. Treat them the right way, invest in them, help them see the value that they add to the company and that you value them, and they will stay. And you may not be able to keep them in your department for 10 years. You shouldn't want them in your department for 10 years. You should help them move onward and upward within your company. So let's go ahead and look at this framework. I think this is, again, just important, especially as you guys are going through this strategic planning right now. And this is another good survey from the CGMA. I just spoke at one of their conferences. They have some really good content. And so if you look at the skills, right, that we want for a successful finance professional, I love this here. We need technical skills, business skills, leadership skills, people skills. But what sits in the middle here? Our digital skills, because our digital skills, our technology is what really empowers a lot of these different areas. And then, of course, what we want at the top, you can't buy this. Sometimes it's hard to teach this. You can't teach integrity. In my mind, you have it or you don't. Ethics, you can teach, and professionalism, you can teach to a degree. You have to have it, but you have to care. Some folks need to learn. I still need to learn, right? I'm a stand-up comedian, so sometimes I need to learn more on that. But this, I think, is incredibly valuable. And so when we look at skills, again, this seems like common sense, but I think it's insightful. What are the skills that impact performance? So ask yourself these questions. What specific skills matter most for success in finance in today's world, on your team, for your company, in your industry? How do you assess if not your team members have these skills? Boy, I need to have an English coach. My English teacher is cringing in her seat. How do you assess if your team has these skills? And how do you decide whether to train up or bring in the skills needed? So a lot of times you get the framework set up, it can be a little bit of an effort, but once you have it, you can use it year over year. These are my skills that I think impact performance. And so these are things that are becoming more prevalent. And I know for CFOs and Treasury, especially, I'm a little bit more informed on Treasury because I have some colleagues that work at the leading Treasury recruiting firms in the country. And I also have run the job site treasuryjobs.com. I ran the career center for the AFP, so I'm really confident that these skills are on point, and they tell me what companies are looking for. So what we see more focus on is interpersonal skills, relationship building. This is key. Effective communication. I'll take effective communication over analytical abilities all day long. Written, email, reports, presentations, finance blocking and tackling, these are important. You got to master these. If you master that, then that opens up a world of strategic opportunity. Problem solving, we have to have a little bit of tech savvy, leadership, innovation, passion for learning, knowledge of the business. Now, you're like, man, all my people can't really have all these at a high level. They probably don't. But what we want to do is make sure that your team has all of these. And then John's our analytical guy. Well, let's have John work with Joe because Joe's not very good. And then Joe's really has some really good interpersonal skills. So let's have our folks function like a team. And people and yourselves, you need to be a team player as well as leader. Very few leaders are very good team members. And that's what we want to be. And that's what we want our team members to be. And then just some more, I like this as well. And so just, again, some more good research to kind of give some analysis behind my assertions here. So these are things that you would looking for on the technology front. these are the digital skills, right? These are things that are going to help us. And then these are the mindsets and behavior that we want to look for. Again, happy to share the slides with you if you're interested in that. But I think it's important. It helps us think. We see the survey results. We want to benchmark. Are we going in the right direction? How does this apply to my company? Where you stand depends on where you sit, right? And I'm trying to give us a broad-based coverage here to make sure that I'm touching on wherever you might be at in your company. And now here is some specific advice for skills analysis. And when you define your skills gap, right? So these are, put it in the terms of people, process, and technology that you need to build, to fill those gaps, and then that'll help us prioritize those gaps. And a lot of times when we move inherent barriers, then we can start to mitigate those gaps, or sometimes they actually go away. So you need to think about people. Who do you need to get on board if you need to get more money and training? Who do you need to redeploy or engage, internal or external people to get you where you want to be? Maybe it's as simple as leveraging the acumen of your bank partners. Maybe it's your AR automation providers. Maybe it's your audit firm. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. There's so much free knowledge out there. YouTube. I mean, I offer some great content. CFO.com, CFO Leadership Council. I mean, there's just your big four. So there's so much free information out there. So you shouldn't feel like you don't have access to the information you need. Technology, what do you need, right? What do you need to communicate better? What do you need to access new software upgrades? What allows you to do robust scenario analysis? What allows us to communicate effectively? How do we get off Excel when we can? I love Excel. And I'm not saying it's not awesome for some things, but some things we can do a little better. And then on processes, what processes do we need to change? What policies do we need to change? And what new ones do we need? So let's think about, make that informed decision, be able to make that business case for your boss. Okay, these are the things that we need to improve upon. I need to get my folks up to speed on X, Y, Z. This is the cost, but let's look at the benefits, right? We know the drivers, right? This is going to help us process invoices more quickly. This is going to help us convert more folks to commercial card payments. This is going to lower processing costs. This is going to help our working capital management, so we can help you get there. And then if you want to benchmark yourself through what's out there, what are the top skills gaps from the finance leaders? Again, it depends on your situation, but business acumen, behavioral leadership for business partnership is up here, right? In this top skills maps, we have data modeling, data science. I would argue those are things that you can outsource and lean on your providers for, and then your business architect down there. So just to give you some context. And so you build your team, right? That's great, but you have to manage it. So how do you manage your finance dream team? I love this graphic, even though I created it. It's not the most clean graphic you've ever seen, but your culture stands in the middle, not only your company culture, your departmental culture, but also your personal culture, who you are as a person. And these are things that are going to facilitate departmental success. And these are things that you can help other leaders across the enterprise develop as well. This should be something that is agreed upon at the company level and should be pushed down to every single departmental manager. People, you have to be a good boss. That means offering praise, and you have to be vested in success. You have to want accountability. You have to make sure there's personal, departmental, and company level accountability. People need to understand the professional value they offer. We have to have a positive environment free of toxic coworkers and an atmosphere of tension. Now, I'm going to say, people know me, there's a difference between toxic and disruptive. There's nothing wrong with being disruptive as long as you do it in a mindful manner. There has to be friction to move forward. So let's have a positive environment. Let's have an open environment, but let's just not necessarily dismiss someone who thinks outside of the box. That is a skill set. Being disruptive in a productive manner is incredibly powerful. Of course, the ability to be disruptive and not toxic goes with your values and ethics. Let's formalize our business ethics, educate our employees, and instill them in your culture. We need to be invested in their personal growth, not only of our employees, but ourselves. Our company should offer programs that offer wellness, health, support, hobbies, and then we have to have opportunities for professional growth. Encourage our people to tell me what you need to be more successful in your job. What would you like to learn? Give them opportunities to develop new skills and areas of expertise and offer those opportunities. Encourage them. Don't make them feel like you're holding them back. John, you really want to go into IT? Okay, you can. Let's make sure you work with IT on projects. We want to make sure you learn everything you can here, but don't be afraid. Let's keep those employees in-house. And then maybe the foundation here, I think, is communication. Feedback is constructive and honest, and employees feel informed. People would much rather receive non-positive feedback. I would say it's always positive. They'd rather receive constructive feedback than no feedback at all and feel like they're not being valued. So let's keep people in the loop. Here's my one of my tidbits on strategy, and anyone who knows me will say to this: I'm not afraid of competition. I'll tell exactly everybody what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and I'm going to focus on how I'm going to get better. So you can worry about trying to get better than me while I'm figuring out how to change my value proposition. So I'm not going to worry. I might look and see how I can learn and get better from my competitors, but I'm not going to be obsessed with trying to block them out from what I'm doing. I'm going to keep getting better. In terms of technology, let's go ahead and launch a polling question real quick. Just want to get the sense of where you guys might be at in terms of the importance of technology in delivering value to your company, your finance, or what be the case. Treasury team has a technology to succeed. Do you think you have the technology that you need in-house right now? Strongly disagree, disagree, neither disagree or agree, or do you strongly agree? Again, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. I would go ahead and leave the polling question up for just another few seconds or so to be mindful of our time. We only have a few moments here. Then we're going to take a quick peek at the results and touch on technology. Happy to have a more in-depth conversation about technology with anyone. As you well know, that is a key focus of mine. And again, I think it really empowers. Technology is not magic, but the big thing is it helps us get our time back and gives us the time to focus on offering more value. Let's go ahead and close the polling question. And so let's take a quick peek at the results. And so I'm pleasantly surprised that 43% of us agree or strongly agree. And so the issue is that if you neither disagree or agree, disagree or strongly disagree, do you know what technology you need? Do you know the value proposition in getting there? Do you know how to make the business case to help you get there? And even those of you that agree or strongly agree, if you have questions about how do you make the business case, how do I know what I need, anything along those lines, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you offline. But I think that's something you need to look at as well. This is the technology that we don't have. It's creating this issue. What's the value of doing that? Maybe I wish it's this year, maybe it's not. Just be mindful of these are the things that are holding us back, CEO. We could be adding more value. So interesting slide here. Just how we're coming along in terms of technology, CFOs, things that are coming and things you should be looking at. I talk a lot about AP and AR. It's going. Budgeting and forecasting. I don't know where ERP sits on here, but I guess it lies over here. That's really gone up the chain. So there's a lot of software out there. It's amazing what's out there. And so just to give you a little level set, if we look at what's going on, this is more treasury focus. AI, look at accounts receivable. We're able to automate cash app, collections, credit, dispute. I have whole webinars on AI across the enterprise there. AI is coming to cash forecasting, which is incredibly cool. So just a few slides on technology. Let me go ahead and offer my closing thoughts. Then we'll go ahead and launch our final polling question. And these are my recommendations as well. You need to be driven by technology, relationships, and innovation. We need to empower success within and beyond finance. We need to develop and execute a comprehensive technology strategy. We got to focus on mitigating time spent on non-valuable activities by all company employees, not just our own. We need to invest in our own professional development as well as our staff and every member of the office of the CFO. And then we need to facilitate a company culture of accountability, innovation, and business agility. We go ahead and real quickly launch our final polling question. And as I wrap things up on our webinar today, I would like to once again thank our webinar partner today, Tipalti. Again, we appreciate their strong commitment to thought leadership. I strongly encourage you to go to the Tipalti website. They have some fantastic thought leadership resources. I think their commitment is evident and the fact that they let me speak. This was my topic, CFO success in 2020 and beyond. I don't think you'll see, you never heard me mention one Tipalti name once or product during the webinar, and that's because they share my commitment, and I strongly respect their commitment to the Treasury and finance profession. Let me go ahead and leave the polling question up for another 10 seconds or so. Also want to let everyone know, if you don't know, we are going to be delivering the first ever Treasury and Finance virtual conference, full-blown virtual conference, everything that you can get at an in-person conference and more. April 21st to 23rd, 2020. There will be a question in the post-webinar survey whether or not you'd like more information on that. I would sincerely appreciate your support in this innovative place where we're all going in terms of our professional development. And finally, I would like to thank my audience. Thank you so much for your valuable time and your support. I do sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.